Welcome to Wonderland Stories, where every story takes you to a world of magic, courage, and imagination. Today's tale is about a curious little girl who tumbles into the most extraordinary land ever, the story of Alice in Wonderland. Once upon a time, in a quiet countryside, there lived a bright and curious little girl named Alice. She had golden hair that shimmered under the sunlight, eyes as blue as the sky, and a mind always filled with wonder. Alice loved to read storybooks about knights, dragons, and magical lands, but deep down, she wished to see such places herself. One sunny afternoon, Alice sat beneath a tall oak tree with her elder sister. While her sister read a history book, Alice's thoughts drifted into daydreams. Suddenly, from the corner of her eye, she saw something very peculiar. A white rabbit wearing a blue coat and holding a golden pocket watch. "Oh dear! Oh dear! I shall be late!" cried the white rabbit as he hurried past. Alice blinked in surprise. "A talking rabbit? Wearing a coat?" she whispered. Without a moment's hesitation, she jumped up and followed him. The white rabbit darted across the field and disappeared into a large rabbit hole under a hedge. Alice leaned over to look, and the next thing she knew, she was tumbling headfirst into darkness. Down, down, down she fell, spinning past floating shelves filled with books, maps, and teacups. She wasn't scared, she was too curious. At last, she landed softly on a pile of leaves in a strange, brightly lit hallway filled with tiny doors. Alice stood up and brushed off her dress. She spotted a glass table with a tiny golden key upon it and a bottle labeled, "Drink me." "Why not?" she said cheerfully, taking a sip. Instantly, she began to shrink. She grew smaller and smaller until she was no taller than a teacup. "Oh my!" gasped Alice. "Now I can fit through the little door." Through the small doorway, she saw a beautiful garden filled with colorful flowers, fountains, and singing birds. But before she could open the door, she realized she had left the key on the table, far above her reach. "Oh dear, what shall I do now?" she sighed. Just then, she spotted a small cake labeled, "Eat me." She took a tiny bite and began to grow taller, taller and taller until her head touched the ceiling. "Now this is quite inconvenient," said Alice, laughing at her long arms and legs. After a few bites and sips, Alice managed to make herself just the right size to fit through the door. She stepped into the most enchanting garden she had ever seen. Butterflies fluttered like rainbows, and talking flowers greeted her cheerfully. "Hello, little visitor. Welcome to Wonderland," they sang. Alice smiled and curtsied. "How do you do? Could you tell me where the white rabbit went?" "He's gone that way," said a daisy, pointing toward a winding path lined with giant mushrooms. Alice thanked the flowers and followed the path. Soon she met a blue caterpillar, sitting atop a mushroom, smoking a long hookah. The caterpillar had an air of great importance. "Who are you?" he asked lazily. Alice thought about it. I'm not quite sure anymore. I've changed size so many times today that I hardly know who I am." The caterpillar chuckled. "One side of this mushroom will make you grow taller, and the other will make you shorter. Choose wisely." Alice carefully broke off 2 pieces of the mushroom and tucked them into her pocket. "Thank you, sir," she said politely. After walking further, Alice arrived at a strange tea party set under the trees. A long table was crowded with teapots, cups, and pastries. Seated there were the Mad Hatter, a man with a funny hat full of feathers, and the March Hare, a lively brown rabbit with twitching whiskers. "Welcome, welcome," cried the Mad Hatter. "Have some tea." "It's always tea time here," said the March Hare, giggling. Elise sat down, bewildered. The tea party was the silliest thing she had ever seen. Everyone talked nonsense, riddles without answers, and songs that made no sense at all. When Elise asked for a clean cup, they moved around the table, changing seats again and again. "I think I've had enough tea for one day," said Elise politely, standing up. As she wandered away, she entered a forest where she met the Cheshire Cat, a large pink and purple striped cat who could appear and disappear at will. He smiled so wide that his grin hung in the air even when the rest of him vanished. "Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here?" asked Elise. "That depends on where you want to get to," purred the cat. "I don't much care where." "Then it doesn't matter which way you go," he said, his grin widening. "But I'd like to find the white rabbit," Elise insisted. "Oh, he's at the Queen's croquet game," said the cat. "Be careful, the Queen is not fond of losing." And with that, the Cheshire Cat slowly faded until only his smile remained. Elise followed the directions and soon came upon a grand castle surrounded by playing cards shaped like soldiers. They marched about, painting white roses red under the Queen's strict orders. "Off with their heads!" shouted the Queen of Hearts, a short and fiery woman in a red gown. "Who dared plant white roses?" The poor card soldiers trembled. Elise stepped forward bravely. "Please, Your Majesty, they only wished to please you." The Queen looked at Elise suspiciously. "And who are you, child?" "I'm Elise, Your Majesty," said Elise with a curtsy. "And I'd love to play croquet with you." The Queen's mood changed at once. "Very well, let's play." But the croquet game was utter chaos. The balls were live hedgehogs, the mallets were flamingos, and the arches were bent over playing cards. The hedgehogs kept running away, and the flamingos refused to cooperate. Everyone argued, and the Queen shouted, "Off with their heads," every few minutes. Amid the confusion, Elise spotted the white rabbit again, nervously holding a scroll. "The Queen demands a trial," the rabbit announced. A trial? Elise was shocked. Apparently, someone had stolen the Queen's tarts, and everyone was blaming the Knave of Hearts. The courtroom was filled with card soldiers, animals, and nonsense. The King of Hearts acted as judge, while the Queen glared at everyone. "Call the first witness," cried the king. Elise found herself growing taller again, taller and taller until she towered over everyone in the courtroom. "I don't care for nonsense," she declared. "You're all just a pack of cards." At that moment, the cards rose into the air and flew at her like a storm. Elise tried to brush them away, and suddenly, she was back under the oak tree beside her sister. She blinked. The sunlight shone through the leaves. The book lay open beside her, and not a single card soldier was in sight. It had all been a dream. Elise smiled softly. "What a curious dream," she whispered. But it felt so real. Her sister laughed. "Come, Elise, it's time for tea." As they walked home hand in hand, Elise thought about Wonderland, the talking rabbit, the grinning cat, the silly tea party, and promised herself that she would never stop being curious or believing in impossible things. And perhaps, if you ever sit quietly under a tree and listen closely, you might just hear the faint laughter of the Mad Hatter or catch a glimpse of the Cheshire Cat's grin. Moral of the story: imagination is a gift. Never lose your sense of curiosity, for it leads you to the most magical adventures, even if they happen only in your dreams. Outro. Thank you for watching Wonderland Stories. If you loved Elise's magical adventure, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more enchanting tales that bring your imagination to life. See you in the next story, where dreams and wonder never end.